the Obama administration, through Secretary of State John Kerry, are pushing for a Palestinian state by ceding land from Israel today, and at the same time they're embracing Iran and forgetting Iran's malice towards Israel.
Yes.
What does Israel have to fear from the Obama administration?
Yes. Well, you know, it's always been the case, and we can't just pinpoint it on President Obama, of presidents in the past have always wanted to build a legacy of being the person who brokers peace between Palestinians and Israelis. So this has been true under Clinton, true under Bush, as well as true under President Obama. However, I believe that in the Middle East, the distrust of the attempts by the West to broker peace, I think will fail. I don't think it will succeed. However, it is very likely that the brokering of this peace treaty must come about from a major Islamic entity in which the Palestinians will trust. That would be, I believe, the government of Turkey. Maybe perhaps under Erdogan, maybe afterwards, in which the peace process will not be sort of an Oslo peace accord, but an accord between Israel and several other entities, not just the Palestinians and the Israelis, but the Israelis, the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Syrians, the Israelis in Lebanon, the Israelis and Egypt, the confirming of the Camp David or reconfirming the Camp David Accord. This has to come in which the Islamist movements in the Middle East will very likely listen to a major power peg in the Middle East. That is the arising of the Turkish government under the AK party. And so it's going to be a much more bigger picture than before, and much bigger problematic for the State of Israel, because this is involving several nations in which, of course, those peace treaties are considered in the Islamic ideologue's mindset as a hudna or a ceasefire treaty.
Temporary ceasefire.
Yes, it's a temporary ceasefire treaty. In Islam, you can have a peace, not a peace treaty, but a ceasefire treaty up to 10 years. In fact, in the Quran itself, even the example has always been given by Salah ad-Din. And Salah ad-Din asked his consultant, and he said, should we have peace with the Crusaders, with Richard of the Lionheart? And the example was given that the consultant of Salah ad-Din said, the Quran says, if they concede to peace, then concede to peace. And the famous statement made by Salah ad-Din, he says, I am a Kurd. He's Kurdish, not of Arab origin, and you are an Arab as his advisor. He says, the Quran also says, why should you concede to peace when you have the upper hand? And so when you are weaker and you want to gain concessions, you can make a ceasefire treaty, but you can never have it continue on for more than 10 years.
So is it sound thinking for Israel and America to imagine that Israel could receive a true guaranteed peace from such a Muslim or Islamist culture?
It is impossible, I believe, from looking at Islamic history itself, the history of the Middle East, that a Israeli government or the Israeli society, which basically is viewed as the boss over the Palestinians in this case, and having an ownership of what Islam considers as a waqf, which is an Islamic holy ground, as that there will ever be a real genuine peace treaty between Islamic nations and the State of Israel. It's an impossibility. It's wishful thinking. It's never happened in the past. So I believe that this is simply the attempts of politicians to gain legacies for gaining political grounds and for elections of some sort, but it has nothing to do with a genuine attempt by these administrations to establish genuine peace, because it's always about Israel giving concessions and the other side giving absolutely nothing.
So would ceding land temporarily ultimately bring peace to the Jewish state?
Well, the issue of the Palestinian-Israeli peace or the Oslo was not an issue of land for peace. It's an issue of gaining more land, as Yasser Arafat said very clearly in Jordanian television, right after the Oslo Peace Accord, and as well as he said in the mosque in Johannesburg, that this is a progressive taking piece by piece of land in order to create Palestinian entity and to use it as a springboard to begin to attack the state of Israel and dismantle it from within. And so far, this program has been carried out very well by both the PA and as well as even Hamas lobbing. There's about 10,000 rockets being lobbed at the state of Israel. It's not something that any state in the world that would put up with 10,000 rockets, but that's the status quo, and Israel just keeps giving concessions for what they believe is a piece of paper that says peace. I believe that the only way to have peace is basically to destroy Hamas completely and to begin to destroy the terror infrastructure completely in the Palestinian arena, and then have peace with a defeated enemy versus having peace with an enemy that is well armed and is being trained and is using missiles and things of that sort. So I believe crushing the enemy must come first before you have any sort of a ceasefire or a peace treaty.
As a Palestinian native yourself, Palestinian Arab, with connections and people who you care about who live there in the West Bank, perhaps Gaza, what would you like to see for their guaranteed safe future, mutual safety of the Arabs?
Look, even talking, even last time I remember before I broke off with my family, before they discovered my change ideology, I've asked them those questions as far as how was life after Oslo, and they very straightforward told me that, you know, life during the occupation was much better. Those were the good old days, as they put it. I said, well, then why don't you call for the Israelis to come back? And of course, one of my family members said that, you know very well that we will never accept the Jews to rule over us. In other words, this is not the idea of the desire of the Palestinian people to live in peace and harmony or coexist with Israel. It's the desire of the Palestinian people to dismantle Israel from its roots. This is why when we look even after Oslo, you know, there's only 5% of the Palestinian areas have Jewish settlements, what they call, or residents, and they want to dismantle all these Jewish communities. You know, you could talk to from Saab Ariqat to anyone in the Palestinian diplomats, and you could see the double speak in the Arabic language or slip of a tongue here and there, in which they very clearly say that when Palestine is established, there will be no Jew allowed to live in the state of Palestine. So we come to the issue that is not an issue of land. It's not an issue of even a state. It's an issue of the dismantlement of Jewish presence in the land.
Even if a border were to be created where there were no Jews on the Palestinian side, would the Jewish side of the state of Israel even be safe then from this Palestinian entity?
Well, I mean, you don't find Palestinians carrying a the map of Palestine and in Israel. It's all from the river to the sea. This speaks volumes, and any curriculum, you look at the school curriculum, it all has the entire Israel as, you know, quote, Palestine. And so this is actually a dream in the West, a dream by many elitists who want to have this fancy idea. There was never a state of Palestine, historically speaking. In fact, if you look historically, the Arabs never ruled that land we call Palestine more than 100 years from the last 4,000 years. It was the Rashidin, the Umayyad, very short period of time in history that the Arabs ruled that land. It has always been Israel, the Jewish, or the Crusaders, or the Ottomans, or the English. So why are we creating a state, especially that the PNC, Palestinian National Council, had never called for a Palestinian state to call Palestine up, you know, way after even the Oslo, the 1967 war. Even within the 70s, you would still see that the idea of the Palestinian National Council was to rejoin the West Bank with the East Bank of Jordan. And so they were very loyalist to Jordan even still. So the idea wasn't a Palestine, the idea of taking the land away from the Jews.